We're grateful to have Ambassador Nicolae Chirtoaca here with us in Utah Valley, and his lovely wife Tatiana, a very charming lady. Ambassador Chirtoaca, I found out something interesting that's not part of his bio. His background is really architecture, which I think is very appropriate because he is in a very direct way one of the architects of modern Moldova. As I go through his background, you'll see how that came to being. He was appointed to head up the Ministry of Defense in 1990 and actually took a very active part in the creation of the Army. He later became National Security Advisor to the President of the country and then retired. He became the founder of the Liberal Party of Moldova and was vice chairman of that party for a while. And in 1999, he returned to the state service and became senior state advisor to the Prime Minister. In the meantime, he is also a member of the Soros Foundation Managing Board in Moldova and director of the Invisible College of Moldova, sponsored by the Soros Foundation, and has quite an academic background as well as a background in government service. He was the president of the managing board of the Euro-Atlantic Center of Moldova, which was an independent think tank in problems particularly related to political and international relations. That will just give you a flavor. I really don't want to spend a great deal of time because he's done so many things, but he is in a way, in a very direct sense, an architect of modern Moldova. Let's welcome the ambassador, please.
Well, thank you very much, and I would like to start my presentation by expressing my gratitude to the University for this wonderful and unique opportunity to speak with you, to share with you some ideas and some understanding of the reality in the east of Europe, at least because my small Moldova is still struggling for stability, security, just getting closer to the final phase of democratic consolidation. We call it transition to democracy. Democracy as is perceived as a liberal democracy, as a model, as a normalcy for young and independent states who declared its independence after the Moscow Putsch in August 91. But we say in small countries, we say in Moldova that we have to think strategically just to act locally in a proper way, simply because it's a problem of survival. Even despite we have 800 kilometers between my eastern border of my country and Russian Federation, so in between is Ukraine, but we feel the presence of Russian Federation, and especially after 2004, the last NATO enlargement. This is a changing geopolitical reality, changing new risks, new threats, not only soft but hard. And I before coming here, said I will speak as ambassador, but at the same time as a director for many, many years of one of the independent research institutes. And I would like to offer you a general picture of, in our perception, what is going on in Eurasia that is more than geography, more than geopolitics, that region. At the same time, region when we find Western Europe, new member states of the European Union, enlarging NATO, new neighborhood between NATO and EU, and Eurasia, which is Russia. And Russia is emerging as a global player, would like to be one of the pillars of multipolar world. And in between, there's many, many countries like Ukraine, Moldova, Azerbaijan, Armenia. Mostly, there's trying to struggle for closer relationship with the West, and it's a strong resistance. And even taking into consideration, while August, the war in Georgia, so it's new dynamics and new balance of power. And maybe emerging buffer zones in Europe, who knows? But let's start with, it's a little bit sophisticated, but, Eurasia. So what shaped Eurasia? First of all, of course, it's NATO's enlargement in its post-Cold War period that created the new geopolitical reality alongside the conventional border of ex-Soviet space. NATO is 100 kilometers far from my capital, as well as EU. So basically, we do not feel the presence. We don't feel it anyway. But this is a geopolitical. We are neighborhood with NATO. And of course, that provoked an active opposition of Russia to the further eastward expansion of alliance, as well of the European Union. Russia would like Europe. Russia like European Union. Russia does not like, of course, military component of the European Union. And you know, President Sarkozy just recently had a chance to be in the Congress when he made a presentation regarding the EU military and security branch, which is a little bit of debate concerning the NATO main objectives, goals, and the EU as instrumental for security and stability of this part of Europe. Europe has finally reached the frontiers of its influence, first of all, as the European Union, and has no clear idea what to do with a new neighborhood getting too close to Russian Federation borders. We have action plans with Europe, but we have a feeling that European Union, larger Europe, because speaking about regional identities, Europe has an identity of Western Europe. Then European Union enlargement created getting closer to the current status. But Europe, geographically and geopolitically, is from Gibraltar to Ural Mountains. And the biggest part of western part of Russia, geographically, is a part of Europe. So what is the European identity? So basically, what is the intersection of culture, identity, if you like, security, energy, security, can create these final borders of Europe? This is a quite a lot of contradictory movement and no clear ideas and perception. So basically, European Union has enlarged, though it's still hesitant to agree its future constitution and future vision. Unfortunately, we can say the European Union hasn't got a vision. If an entity hasn't got a vision, it cannot have a strategy. If there is not a strategy, this is a reactive approach to the new circumstances that appear. And we would like, of course, to have proactive Europe, and we'd like to have much more proactive NATO in ensuring stability and security in this part of Europe. Of course, many countries like Moldova, from the emerging East and Southeastern Europe, embarked already on the democratic reforms, undergoing extraordinarily deep structural changes, which contains also the big threats to our stability and security. And of course, the problem of frozen conflicts. Moldova is still confronted with a so-called Transnistria. It's a strip of land alongside the border with Ukraine. Azerbaijan, Armenia with Nagorno-Karabakh, one of the most complicated conflicts. This is at many, many layers and overlapping national identity, history. It can be compared with the conflict between Israel and Palestinian authorities. And of course, unfortunately, the South Ossetia and Abkhazia conflicts are over because these Georgian territories have been recently occupied by Russia. So this is a map, just to have an idea about, it's a Department of State website, so it's a very reliable map of Eurasia. When you see the Western Europe, you see the really patchwork of small states and the huge. I have here, I think, another device would be. No, it's not. Okay. And of course, Russia, that is, who knows this part of the world, knows that Russia is a population in Asian part, is like in Canada, living alongside the southern border, is almost not populated, and mostly populated in European part of the continent. So, geopolitical dimensions of the new Europe's East. I would like to focus your attention, draw attention to the new European East. The Eastern Europe, I think, emerging country like even Belarus of Lukashenko, Ukraine, Moldova, and South Caucasus region, it's a new East of Europe. Understanding the confusions of a lack of clear identity in this part of Europe. But the new independent states and young democracies of this part of the new emerging New Eastern Europe, geostrategic and economic, formed these geostrategic and economic regions that became the European Union new neighborhood as a result of this multilateral organization, eastward enlargement. Now, this region could be characterized in the following way. First, the overwhelming majority of the region countries are Western friendly. We would like to implement the Western model of liberal democracy and sustainable market economy. And integration into the EU for Moldova and Azerbaijan and EU and NATO for Georgia and Ukraine are the biggest and fundamental goals of the foreign policy of the countries. Second, the Western long-term strategic objectives are shared by the majority of our countries. And our countries, speaking about Moldova, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Ukraine, we are a member of a regional organization known as GUAM. GUAM. It sounds exotic, but it's the first letter of the countries. These strategic objectives of the West, security, stability through democracy, development, modernization within the framework of globalization and high level of interdependence, are shared by these countries. We are not afraid of globalization. We would like to belong to the family of Western democracies, and we would like to benefit from that, and this is all about development and modernization of these nations. And finally, the countries of the region are still undergoing reforms, and we would like to end as quick as possible this transition that contains, as I mentioned, quite a lot of risks. And the unfinished reforms make our nations extraordinarily fragile and endangered by changing external threats and geopolitical rivalry in the region. What is the Russian Federation vision of the region? Because Russia is one of the biggest players, and since 2004 has a very proactive policy, reactive in the West and very proactive in the East. First of all, the Russian Federation does not perceive itself as a part of a large Eurasian space. I mean, it's not a part of Western European civilization, and which is based on unconditional respect toward democratic principles and freedoms. Russia is currently in a stage of authoritarian capitalism. It's oligarchic capitalism. Russia is caught in its own phase of capture state. For those of you who will, please, this is interesting notions. You can find it on the internet. It was an amazing report of the World Bank in 2001. What means capture state? It's this is oligarchic groupings from one side, and the corrupt politicians and bureaucrats capture the state, and they are not interested in providing democracies. They control mass media, they decapitate the opposition, they control everything, and the grandeur of the state and the state as a main player appear as being the most important goal of these groupings. But unfortunately, this is all about development. Russia is developing on the basis of the sharp rise of oil and natural gas prices. It's roughly annually is income roughly $600 billion. But this is not enough for development. This is all about the current state of affairs, but not a way of creating the sustainability of Russian model. And due mostly to its history, Russia never has been a democracy. Traditions, this is the Soviet past, if you like, shortly. Size is 1/6 of the globe. And because of the regional and global ambitions to equality, to be treated as equal partner, parity with the West, never part of a multilateral organization with some veto rights and stuff like that. Moscow does not and will not have in the foreseeable future the intention to become an equal member of European and transatlantic community of nations. At the same time, the wild Russian capitalism needs markets, needs dialogue, and needs participation. This will be kind of duplicity. There's a strong fight for equality in the relation with the West, and a partnership, especially in a business, because these oligarchic groups, they need cooperation and they need openness toward the international markets. And Russia's economic recovery, all coupled with the emergence of alternative international networks and regional arrangements, gives the leadership of the country the ability to ignore the U.S. interest in the region, reducing considerably the West maneuvering room in the eastern part of Europe. And for frozen conflict settlement, this is an example I will speak a little bit later about this Russian more active and the West a little bit having limited room for maneuvers. At the same time, Russia is still facing the risk of unfinished transition capture state. This will definitely explain quite a lot what is going on in modern Russia. And now, my opinion, the frozen conflicts, so-called frozen conflicts, are still, and two territories occupied in Georgia, and Georgia never will renounce to regain this territory, are still the most dangerous because they are used in a geopolitical rivalry, and it's not a local conflict. And the conflicts are considered frozen. It sounds a little bit of the frozen, who frozen the conflicts? But mostly because the political processes and diplomatic formats have been designed by Moscow at the beginning of the 90s in order to maintain influence on all sides involved in a conflict through divide and rule policy. I'd like to remind you that such kind of separatist crisis appeared on the territory of former Soviet republics that declared pro-Western orientation. Moldovan, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and basically, so since 1991, we are still confronted with the problem. Secondly, the conflicts are source of permanent insecurity of neighborhood countries as well, and the instrumental for Russian policy in the neighborhood. Now there's quite a lot of analysts saying that in Ukraine they have a peninsula, Crimean Peninsula. There's quite a lot of preconditions for appearance of kind of separatists. It's a Black Sea Fleet. It's a big part of Russian population with a hold of Russian passports. Russia provides the opportunity to explain the intervention by protecting the citizens and many, many others. And international law does not function in this part of Europe, where fronts and conflicts continue to destabilize the situation and keep the states and society divided. That's the two basic principles: the right of the states to territorial integrity versus the rights of national minority to protection, even to independence, in the case their existence are threatened by the titular nations. Sounds a little bit sophisticated, but this is a legal norm. And this is a Kosovo versus Georgia. This is very interesting. So, I mean, speaking in terms of international norms and principles, this is a different perception, different perspective. This is a way of understanding the reality to create much more ambiguity. And of course, we consider that this is an insufficient involvement of the United States and the European Union in stabilizing this part of Europe. United States, because of commitment in Iraq, Afghanistan, it's a huge problem, and the non-proliferation of nuclear arms, it's Iran, North Korea, and of course, America hasn't got a relatively limited resources to be involved in many, many, many situations. And the European Union would like it still dependent on energy, gas, less oil supply from Russia, would like to have a channel of communication with Russia, and it's very careful, and this is a realpolitik approach with a small step approach to these situations. Well, this is a Moldova. Just, you see, this is a, I should have yes, something. Who is it? Laser? Oh, thank you. So this is a Moldova. This is a strip of land just alongside. This is Ukraine. This is Romania. This is Ukraine, also in the Black Sea. And this is a strip of land which is basically is around 250 miles long, and the largest part is 40. And this is a kind of, we call it rock statelet, that considers that it's states, it exists as a state, has a right to exist. And we created, I've been representative of my country, and I've been chief negotiator with Russians of ceasefire agreement in '92. We signed in Kremlin with my president and President Yeltsin. And I've been involved actively in creating this security zone with green. We introduced tripartite peacekeeping formations alongside the Dnestr River, and we created these security zones just to separate both sides. Since then, nothing happened. So no big international involvement. It's a status quo. We don't like Russian policies. Russian are using peacekeepers just to threaten. They created paramilitary formations in this strip of land, equal as the potential with Moldovan. We downsized our army. We reduced our military budgets. At the same time, basically it's a future military base, a new Kaliningrad region, if you like. And this is a Russian presence means, first of all, of course, military presence. How the frozen conflicts, just a little bit elaborate, shape the reality in the east of Europe. First of all, like the wars in Balkans at the beginning of the 90s, the recent Russian military intervention in Georgia is a direct threat to Western project. It was Georgia crisis is more than military intervention of Russia. It's a direct threat to Western project that seeks to replace old paradigms such as a balance of power, spheres of influence, and military conquest with integration, negotiations, and the rule of law. It looks that this is not anymore the real perspective for such kind of project to be implemented. If we'll have an emerging buffer zone as a result of compromise and understanding between East and West in this part of Europe. Second, the ambiguity and lack of progress in the conflict settlement highlights the limitation of the current formats and initiatives, including international and multilateral. A certain balance of influence between East and West in the entire region is still profoundly marked by separatist crisis. And third, the unresolved conflicts on the territory of the new independent nations, first of all Guam, Georgia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Moldova, are one of the main barriers in our way towards integration into European and Euro-Atlantic organizations. Look at the Russian policy, very active. Divided states. One of the states was the most ardent desire to integrate into NATO is NATO, Mikhail Saakashvili regime. There's no chance as long as this is divided, and it has quite a lot of problems. Ukraine with a deep political crisis, and you will see that all the destabilized regions have now chance to move closer to the West. And this is a very instrumental for Russian Federation. We are badly struggling, but this goes beyond our opportunity of small nations. Even Ukraine, with the 50 million of people, is not capable just to push stronger and just to move or to get more assistance in this way. And for some conclusions, of course, as long as many states from Eastern Europe remain a gray zone, I call it gray zone of uncertainty, ambiguity, there are many risks and threats, immediate, long-term, for the security and the stability of the entire region in this part of the emerging new east of Europe. And it's a risk for stability and security in Eurasia. The new East European countries from ex-Soviet space are steadily becoming the scene of East-West dispute over the international order in the Euro-Asian geopolitical space. Please read President Medvedev's recent doctrine. And President Medvedev says that Russia considers that have a right to parity in the West, and the ex-Soviet space that has historical and any other many motives just to have special rights in this part of Europe. And the biggest threat for emerging new security order in Eurasia comes from the Western reactive approach towards the current security challenges and risks, from so-called realpolitik, which is versus democratic norms, values, and principles. And realpolitik always is mixed with cynicism of selfish interests. And with a bureaucratically driven accommodation with the relics of the Soviet past. Because the unfinished transition in the eastern part of Europe is an unfinished post-Cold War business in this part of the world. And finally, advancing freedom and democracy in Europe's east remains the only way to finish this business in Europe after the collapse of the Soviet Empire and the end of the Cold War, the basic precondition for the new and efficient security order in Europe. Well, thank you very much. So thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to take your questions. Thank you. Yes, please.
How do you think the Georgian conflict affected the Moldovan potential to solve the Transnistria problem?
It underlines our special way. This is a different way in addressing such kind of conflicts. So we had a short war with Russian troops in summer '92 with the General Lebed, famous General Lebed. So we have been vaccinated. We know exactly that Russia can use a military force, large scale, and intervene. That's why with forceful, using force in solving this problem. And we consider this will not be the efficient way of doing this business. So we rely on the international format. We call it 5+2. 5+2. It's basically Moldova, Ukraine, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, is as well Russia, United States, and the European Union. It's very difficult negotiations. We try to identify it. We propose a package proposal, so our approach is a package proposals, and it means that we consider the key element to share the power between central authorities in Chisinau and separatist authorities. But of course, as long as this strip of land, this crisis, is instrumental for Russian policy and the regional policy, we understand that we are still expecting a clear Russian position. Russia plays the game of status quo for the time being. Yes, please.
Can you just wait for the mic? Sorry, we've got.
Oh, we have a mic.
what are some of the measures that are being taken to move Moldova more towards a globalized country in regards to like regulations and education and other such things?
No, absolutely. So for us, integration into the European Union is really a main strategic goal and a part of our national identity. We consider that European model, as I mentioned, is very good for Moldova. And Europeanization means also a part of globalization. And I think starting with the open society concept, opening Moldova to all kinds of open borders, an economy, and a high level of integration at region, it's all part of globalization. So we do not even think about isolating Moldova. You have a Belarus example. This is a really isolationist. Well, it's isolation is not insulation, isolation of the country. So I think all we are doing and continue to do in our action plan with the European Union, and the fact that Moldova qualified for full system for Millennium Challenge Corporation, and the Millennium Challenge Corporation is a precondition. And this is a means that the U.S. administration has appreciated our reforms and equality and our movement toward democracy and market economy, which are part of globalization. Speaking about mondialization in a French term, globalization is a more Anglo-Saxon pragmatic way, but you can find all the elements of such kind of a strategy in a policy of my country. Yes, please.
Is Moldova, has it been greatly affected by the economic crisis, and so how are you dealing with it?
Oh, thanks a lot. It's a great question. I like one of the articles in Financial Times on 10th of October. You can see the map of Eastern Europe and how emerging markets are affected by the global financial crisis and elements of economic recession. And you'll see the countries like mine, we have GDP growth roughly 8% per year, which is not bad. And Moldova is one of the rare countries that financial crisis affects us only. Financial Times experts say we will have a decrease of roughly 1%, which is 7% of GDP growth. It's quite a good performance. But the problem is, Moldova, we have only 3 international banks operating on Moldovan market. We do not have this speculative capitals floor, and our financial markets are relatively isolated, which is, in these circumstances, is good. For example, Baltic countries' markets are deeply, fully integrated into the European international. They have already not only this recession, this is an anticipated 2-3% of decrease minus in economics. This is a real depression. So small markets, which are not really fully involved, they're a little bit protected. But in the long term, we think that we'll have negative consequences because it's all about, because we all are interdependent in any way. So the Moldovan economy, basically, it's open economy. We do not, immediate, we do not feel immediate consequences, but in the long term, I think we were getting ready, of course.
In your presentation, you made reference to the West's reactive approach towards current security challenges.
Yes.
I wonder if you could expand upon that and give some examples.
Absolutely. So we were expecting that the European Union, for example, that per definition, naturally, is a bigger player in the region because all our countries, Ukraine, Moldova, especially South Caucasus, it's a new neighborhood, eastern neighborhood of European Union. And we've been offered this new neighborhood policy of EU. But European Union, the less developed dimension of European Union, it's a foreign security policy, common foreign security policy. And common foreign security policy, within this dimension, EU should address the new risks and threats and to assist the countries like mine, for example. We are expecting more active involvement. European Union participated in the creation of EOBAM. EOBAM, European monitoring border mission. So when President Yushchenko came to power in 2005, our president common found language, and because this Transnistria is a strip of land squeezed between 2 countries, and the biggest source for sustainability of this separatism is a different kind of criminal activities. And there are 2 big ports. It's Odessa and Ilyichovsk. And a huge amount of contraband that have been simply passing through these ports, legalized in Transnistria, and spread all over the region. It was multi-billion dollars business. And we decided to stop these criminal activities, to protect the borders. And of course, without Ukrainians, it was almost impossible. And the EU, participates quite actively. And this is one of the success stories of EU involvement. But what we mean, it's a security arrangement in this part of Europe, more commitment, more active involvement in a conflict settlement process, more active involvement in a peacekeeping, peacemaking operations. Of course, the United States is present through the special representative, is Deputy Assistant Secretary of State David Merkel in the process of the settlement. But we understand very well all the other commitments and challenges and many other. And of course, the need to keep a dialogue with Russia. So nobody is interested to antagonize Russia. This is understandable. This is a part of realpolitik, basically. Maybe a good part of it. Yes, please, answer questions. Yes.
I understand that you and your nation would appreciate more active participation. Would you care to elaborate what specifically the United States, the EU, could do on behalf of Moldova?
Not only on behalf of Moldova. I think one of the biggest achievements in our bilateral relationship between Moldova, small Moldova, and the United States, it's a strong partnership. We'd like to be treated as partners in this part of Europe and all together in partnership just to change the reality and to make it more stable, more secure, and to create the preconditions for modernization and the prosperity. And for that point of view, I think through the Millennium Challenge corporations, it's general financial assistance, stabilizing Moldova and helping Moldova to move closer to the final stage of transition from one side, and making Moldova more attractive for separatists, this regime, which is really they have facing much more. Moldova, this United States can contribute to the settlement. And of course, a very strong position in a 5+2 format. Until recently, we have a good instruments. It's Istanbul 99 agreement concerning the conventional armed forces in Europe. On Russia formally, assumed the engagement to withdraw because the military presence, this is a big problem. Russian military presence in separatist regions. As long as Russia is military present, this will be quite a lot of headache, quite a lot of problems, and big threats for the country of the region. And because Russia unilaterally withdrew itself from this agreement, this year, at the beginning of this year, so we do not have any more. But this was a great instrument, and this is a United States administration with a big pressure on Russia, just refusing to ratify these conventional armed forces. And conventional armed forces treaties are just keeping the balance in military convention for all over the Eastern and Central Europe. So I think partnership, strong partnership, assistance provided to Moldova, making Moldova attractive, stable, and prosperous country. And the active pressure on Russia when it's possible, just inviting Russia in a dialogue and putting pressure just to Russia to accept some rules of the game, civilized rules of the game. This is a huge assistance, big help.
Has the proposal of the Eastern Missile Defense Shield in Poland and the Czech Republic affected Moldova in any way, and in what ways?
Oh no, we are not on a strategic map of of Russian military headquarters. So I think this is all about, again, parity. I have a feeling that this is not about anti-rocket system, defense system in Czech Republic and Poland. It's mostly every big player is always busy in strengthening its own arguments. And Russia hates to feel militarily vulnerable. Russia hates because for centuries Russia grew up relying mostly on military power, occupying the sixth part of the globe. If Russia is not present military, Russia feels that he's not present at all. And when the West has this kind of shield, an American system, and Russia feel that it's really does not feel secure, it's make Russia Russia is overreacting. And of course, this is a problem not of security and stability. This is a problem of new balance of power, of influence in the region, if you like, NATO involvement, and large-scale political games that we are all part of it or hostages of it. Depends on our size and our involvement and our possibility to take part in these games. We are getting closer to one academic hour, so I understand this is I know being organizing from time to time as a director of Euro-Atlantic Center, different kind of events. I know exactly that if invited a university professor and he says 15, 20 minutes, he will speak exactly 45. So we're getting very close to 45. I was speaking as a director of a research institute. 20 minutes is 20 minutes. So please, we have another 5 minutes for questions. I do not insist, but anyway.
So I had a question about the former Soviet bloc states, such as yours, that many of them have the goal of becoming part of the European Union. What are the three biggest motivations for that, or advantages you see from your perspective?
Oh, first, I would be a little more accurate. We haven't been a member of Soviet bloc. We've been Soviet Union. This is a big difference. So when you say Soviet bloc, you mean the country of so-called Warsaw military organizations, with the Soviet Union as leading. We've been occupied by Russian Empire at the end of 18th century. Since then, we've been independent only from March 1917, with the Russian so-called democratic revolutions, to March 1918, we've been occupied by Romanian troops, and in between, so just a very short 1 year of independence. We've been the Soviet periphery, and this is all about painful transition. We've been a part of a highly centralized, from all points of view, and politically, and economically, and all that. And this, from this part of the periphery, southwestern former Soviet Union, have to build up a new, modern, and European state. This is all about the challenges of transition. And your question is great, because we are undergoing many, many profound structural reforms in all the areas. We have to reinvent the nation, because we've been Soviet. We've been Soviets. We've been Soviet. We are speaking Russian. We have a very distorted understanding of the world. We've been victims of a totalitarian regime. We are living inside this devil's empire and being satisfied with reality. We didn't know anything else. So part of my life, I've been in this country, so I know it very well, what it was. We have to reinvent the nation. We have to construct this state after 300 years. When's the last time we've been occupied by Ottoman Empire and then divided by Russian and Ottoman empires in two parts. Moldova, half of Moldova is still in Romania, and we have been called Bessarabia for a long period of time. We have to transform the militarized economy as a part of a centrally planned economy in an economy of independent states. We have to find a balance and equilibrium. We have to address the Transnistria conflict in a proper way. And this is all about a small 4.2 million population for 20 years. But you know how many lessons we learned. We're still learning. I think from a mystical point of view, I like this American part of American culture. So every time when something happens, the question, what lesson should we learn? The most boring countries, the countries where nothing happened. Switzerland, for example, sorry, so it's not diplomatic. Well, I'm crossing the line. We are learning lessons every day. Well, the big lesson, we should get back to Europe. We belong to Europe. We speak Romanian, Latin origin, Moldovan language. For 2,000 years we are in Europe, and not only geographically. And we never have been slaves. We never have been democracies, but that's why we are so important, the assistance provided by the European Union and by the United States, while through USA, directly, Millennium Challenge Corporation, just pushing the country in the right direction. And Europe is not an elite club. Europe is a continent, it's a culture. If you like, this this is a full clash of civilization. We would like to belong to the Western civilization. We'd like to get back to the family. Maybe as a poor parent somewhere from remote area for the beginning. And the rest with 2,000 years of history, nice, brilliant young generation of people, when dinosaurs will die finally, and we'll have a stronger push toward modernization. So maybe it will move quicker anyway. It's a generational question as well. But we do not see any alternative. What Russia offers a model? It's an authoritarian capitalism. It's déjà vu. So it's nothing new. And authoritarian Russia, unfortunately, is aggressive Russia. National patriotic forces. Russian patriotism always has been synonymous with chauvinism. This is the very nature of Russian empire, as it conquered hundreds of nations and people all around itself. That's why there is no, what is offered, what model? So basically, it's a European model. Because Europe is a post-modern society. We would like to, modernization mean to get closer to become modern and then to go in a postmodern stage. But it's a political philosophy debate already, what it means to be postmodern, was pre-modern, blah, blah, blah. It's quite a lot of different stuff just to discuss. Yes, please.
Given Moldova's linguistic and cultural ties with Romania, I wonder if Romania has any sort of special relation in helping Moldova along toward joining up with the West.
Okay. Oh, thank you. It should be like that. We would like Romania to help us. But unfortunately, Romania for almost 20 years doesn't want, so 18 years doesn't want to sign two basic treaties. The basic treaty itself and the treaty concerning the borders. And Romania portrays itself now, after becoming member of NATO and EU clubs, that Romania is only one divided state, which we feel it's a very irredentist approach. And we don't like it at all. Even now we are not Moldovan, and not for Romania, not the Republic of Moldova. We are Bessarabia. We hate it. So, I mean, we have very good friendly relations. We would like to develop our bilateral as a state-to-state. Just our minister, our Prime Minister, Zinaida Gricianu, who have, by the way, very European principles informing our government. And our government, more than half are women, and our Prime Minister is a woman. It's the full equality of gender, even despite the fact what we feel in our country of Latin and being macho, but women are really very strong in Moldova. And she declared just a week ago that we have a very good relationship. But unfortunately, there are some questions, basic issues like these treaties, and especially about the borders, that should be settled in any way. Communality in language, our common history. It means the best example, we would like the model of our relationship to be like Austria and Germany. It's quite a lot in common language, a lot of history, but different identities and different perception. And we struggled for our freedom, and we continue to struggle for the future of this country. Why should we renounce? And this is too late. These problems of just revision of borders in Europe, this is crazy. Europe is patchwork of states, borders that do not coincide necessarily with the area of where people of different ethnicity nations live. This is a result of many, many wars and history in Europe. We have many other problems just to create a very dangerous precedent in getting back to borders. But it will pass. I think everything will be okay. We have good relationship, but we do not like advocacy of Romania in leading international organizations. We have good, from that point, the Czech Republic and Hungary are really very good friends. Well, thank you very much for your attention and great questions, and and for the opportunity to share some ideas. And as an insider, again, as somebody who cares, who would like America to be involved and to continue to be a global leader, and global leader means global commitments. Thank you very much, and all the best.